Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Local news, politics, business, sports, arts, music. Mike and Marty on the beat. Mike and Marty. Mike and Marty.
Good morning, Saxton. I've lost it already. Good morning, Keene, Bellows Falls, and Rockingham.
There we go.
Here we are. It's the feed with Mike and Marty. April must have done something to my brain.
Must have.
I don't know what's happening. But here we are, April 5th. We're going to be talking about the local theater scene, what's happening, theater groups, theater coordinations, performances, things like that. But first, Marty with local events.
Local events. So the Bellows Falls Opera House is back up and running as normal. This week, starting on April 8th, we have Shazam. I just wanted to say it that way. Shazam. Fury of the Gods. Again, I don't know much more about it than that.
It's a DC comic book movie.
I figured it probably was. That seems to be the big thing. But isn't it kind of it seems like maybe it's got a little comedic.
Yeah, it's a little goofy. The main
Yeah.
character is kind of a silly superhero.
Oh, that's cool. I could deal with that. I can't deal with all of the big fight scenes and all the other stuff, the crazy stuff. Anyway, I digress. Classic movie tonight is Hugo, which is a good classic movie. This Friday night is the second of the Ray Masuko concert series. The Steel Wheels will be performing with Peter Mulvey. There are some good seats left. If people want to get tickets, you can go to the Bellows Falls Opera House.org and get your tickets. Doors open at 6:30, shows at 7:30. And here's kind of a unique option. If you were one of the people that pre-bought tickets in the beginning, before the concerts were announced, Charlie Hunter put out a plea for people to buy seats. So you bought the seats without knowing who the concerts were. So if you bought seats ahead of time and you either can't go to the Steel Wheels or you don't want to go to the Steel Wheels or any of the other concerts coming up, you can actually donate your tickets. You can do it through the library. You can get your tickets to Ian Graham at the library, and he will then get them to people that are interested in going but don't have the means to go.
Oh, that's very nice.
So, which is cool because we were not able to go to the first concert series one, and it was kind of a last minute thing, so we weren't able to give them to anyone that we knew. But if we probably could have gotten them in the hands of somebody that wanted to go versus just letting the seats go because there's no refunds. So I thought that was a pretty cool option. So if you have tickets and you can't go, you have an option to donate them to someone that wants to go.
Yeah, and I think Steel Wheels are going to be really good.
I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of people to go anyway. I think this might not be one where tickets get donated, but who knows?
Yeah,
Something could come up last minute. And then also music in the vein of music, on Thursday, May 18th, Smells Like Nirvana is coming to the Opera House, and that is a cover band show. And I know ticket sales are getting there, but there's still lots of tickets available, and I'm sure that would be a fun thing to do in May.
Yeah.
And then that's all I have for local events, because I know Sean has a lot of events
Sean
to
has
talk about.
Yes,
so
a bunch of stuff. Thank you for coming on, Sean. Good seeing you again.
Always happy to be here.
Yeah. Where do you want to start? I mean, you have so many things going on right now. It's just incredible. I have to digress a little bit. I had some people from New York up last weekend, and they saw the show, and they were so impressed with Bellows Falls and the art scene and the things happening at the Opera House that it made you feel like sort of proud to be a Bellows Falls person. Yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'll start selfishly by just talking about my own play that's happening at the end of this month, April 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th. It's called Through Kern's Eyes. I wrote it back in 2012, and over the COVID lockdown, I adapted it into a book and then rewrote the play for the third time after finishing the book. And then we've been working on it at MSA since the beginning of this year. And it's a modern pagan fairy tale that touches on topics of LGBTQIA plus inclusion, animal and child abuse, and environmentalism. It hits on all of those topics,
Wow.
but in this,
And it does it through sort of a fantasy.
a modern fantasy.
Yeah.
It's about a girl who, if you've seen Fern Gully, it was an
Heard
old
of it, but-
animated movie from
Yeah.
back in the 90s, I believe, and it touches on environmentalism a lot because this child named Erica finds her way into this fairy world in through Kern's eyes, and she ends up trying to help it against this entity called the appetence, which appetence is a word that means consumer great desire, and so it's this thing that wants this consume, and it represents human consumption.
Oh,
And so there's a
interesting.
lot of symbolism and
Yeah.
things like that inside of the play.
So what was your inspiration for this play? Like, how did it just pop up one day, or where did it come from?
A song happened. A movie called The Fountain. I really enjoy its soundtrack. And one day while I was just kind of puttering about the house back in 2012, I think, before I wrote it, and I was listening to the soundtrack and this one song was playing, and then I got this image in my head of this moment during this certain point in the song, and I said, oh, that was cool. I wonder what the story is to that. So I wrote that scene out, the concept of the scene, and then I said, oh, what's the story that led up to this? And so I wrote it actually backwards.
Neat.
The play, because it was the end of the play that I had written there, and so then I just kind of wrote backwards, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, and now I'm going to write it as a full play. And so then that's how it came to be.
So Kern is not. I thought maybe Mike and I were having a debate. We pronounced it wrong, first of all,
Yeah.
and we didn't know if it was an actual like mythical god,
being
mythical being.
It is.
It is
Yeah.
okay.
Kern is actually just a nickname for the Celtic god called Cernunnos.
Oh, okay.
And he's depicted on this cauldron. I think it's the Hallstatt period of Celtic culture. When you think about the word Celt, you're really talking about a certain type of art style. It's not an ethnicity per se, or anything like
didn't know
that.
that
'Cause-
either.
yeah, it's just because it spanned across all of Europe at one point, like
okay.
Eastern and Europe, the France area, even down in like Portugal. And then up in Ireland and Scotland and the UK, it was all over the place. And so the unifying concept of a Celt was really just based on these art styles that existed. There was the Hallstatt period and the Latin period, and that was really like defined them as kind of a culture, was this similar art and linguistic like way of going about their culture. And Cernunnos was a god depicted on this cauldron that was found. And he was thought of as like a god of abundance and of the wild and nature. He's this man who's kind of sitting cross-legged, and he's holding a torque in one hand, which is an ancient Celtic style necklace. And then he's got this horned snake in his other hand, and he has antlers, like deer antlers coming off of his head, and all these animals are depicted around him. And that's who Kern is.
Oh,
He's
interesting.
okay.
I think we have a graphic. I don't know how well it depicts that, but I think we do have a graphic for Kern's.
Yeah, there we go.
Where
And
can
now we
we
can understand
Does that kind of
that,
help?
yeah.
Is that
Yeah, the character depicted on the left is Kern. It's often thought of as, in a lot of modern spirituality, the green man, when we think about that being, or the stag king, which exists inside of like modern pagan Wiccan beliefs. And the being on the right is actually Morg, who is a representation of the Morrigan, which was another ancient Celtic goddess who exists inside of Ireland in the Tuatha De Danann, which was a certain type of Celtic spirituality. And the Morrigan was a goddess of battle and war. A lot of people correlate the Morrigan to kind of like a Celtic version of the Nordic Valkyrie, which was a type of spirit that would come down and pick up the souls of great Norse warriors who died in battle and bring them to Valhalla. The only difference was that the Morg didn't do that. She just watched the battle. She wasn't thought of as someone you would pray to get your blessings from. She was just there. She was
still like an observer.
She was the crows that were flying over the battlefield waiting for the dead to be there. So she was kind of ominous in that sense. There's this foreboding nature to the Morrigan, and she represents the mother goddess in the story, and she creates the thing that's called the appetence because she wants to start over on the planet. She's kind of fed up with humanity and everything we've done
Well,
to the planet.
that's apropos of our times.
I think
gonna
it's
throw that out.
fitting in some of our modern issues that we have going on in the world.
Well, it sounds like
great.
it's a play that'll make you think.
Hopefully, that's kind of one of my goals as a director. Because I kind of take from Sanford Meisner as my acting coach when it comes to the types of techniques of acting that I want to work on. But then when it comes to my purpose as a director, I go towards Bertolt Brecht, Brechtian style theater, which
Three Penny Opera, right?
he really cared about the message.
Yeah.
The message was really important, and he used theater as a form of activism. He used it to try to push forward a message onto the audience, and so I really care about that. I don't like doing theater as a director as just to do something fun and silly without any type of purpose. I really care about trying to influence people through theater.
Nice.
Great.
And you have a thought on, there's a lot of theater around here. And what is it that you're working on to try to unify all of the theater groups?
Yeah. Well, a couple months ago, I started coming up with this idea for the Southeastern Vermont Theater Collective, which would be this idea where we would try to get as many of the local theater groups in the area to, instead of each group putting on their own individual piece during a certain season, we would all come together under one roof. All the directors would work together on different aspects of a show each year, and we would try to do this annually. And so one of the directors would be the director that's working with the actors. Another one of the directors would take on the lighting for for that show and the sound. And each year we would rotate responsibilities, so then everybody feels like they're getting their fair share of those different roles inside of the group. And all these theater groups would come together and put on a single show as one. And the hope is to try to make it so then each group isn't scavenging each season for as many people as they can possibly rope into their own shows, both when it comes to cast, crew, and audience.
Well, you could even look at it another way, though, is that there is a finite number of resources, and if you spread them out all over the place, that finite number of resources isn't going to be sufficient to do really quality stuff. But if you were able to bring all those resources together into a critical mass, then you can move forward, and instead of having these little silos, you come with a really strong set of performances.
Oh yeah, and with each of these directors, you've got this small core group of people that are incredibly passionate to make something happen. But for a lot of us, what ends up happening is, even when it comes to crew, just the people who are working on your set, working on your costumes, working on all those types of things, if all of us had all of our people under one roof, I would feel like the quality of everything that we would do would really go up. And so that's kind of my hope, is to get all of us to come together and to form that collaboration with the goal of friendship in mind. Instead of coming at this local theater thing through this competitive lens that inevitably happens, because if I'm doing a show and you're doing a show and you're doing a show, we're all trying to get a show in before high school graduation starts kicking off. We're all trying to get a show in before the summer ends because we want to make sure we've got the college kids involved. And then we're all trying to make sure that we get a show in before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We're all doing our shows within a month of each other because of those windows that we're trying to fit things in. And that makes it really difficult to not be competitive.
Right.
When it comes to, if I'm doing a show this week, and then if you're even trying to be nice and do a show on another week, so then we're not overlapping, you're now stuck with having to pick either the first earlier week, so you have a shorter run time of working on your show, or you're right at the end after everybody else has exhausted themselves as audience going out
Well, that's
to
what I
see
was
all
just
these
going
other
to say.
shows.
You're diluting, each company is diluting the potential audience.
Right.
Because it's highly unlikely that, I mean, maybe someone, so say there's 4 weekends of different shows, maybe someone would go to all of them because they really love theater, but more than likely, people are going to pick and choose.
Right. And I want to try to get rid of that and try to make it be something that when we come together and put this project on as one, each group gets to walk away with what they put into it. And I mean that on a financial level, because we're planning on putting this on at the Bellows Falls Opera House in the 2024, so next year. This coming summer, I'm meeting with the interested parties, the different groups that have already expressed an interest in being part of this, to be able to sit down kind of at a round table with each other and to discuss potential shows for next year.
So do you have I'm sorry, didn't you?
I was just going to say, I'm thinking that there's probably some productions that some theater groups want to do, but they require so many acting that they just can't do them because they don't have the capacity. So this opens up a whole another level of capacity as to what kind of show can be done. I know there's certain, you hear that sometimes, well, we can't do that show because this is too big of a production for us to do. Even though it's kind of a crowd, and I can't think of an example, but even though it's kind of a crowd pleaser, a one that people like to go to, or we want to do, or we want to, there's too much involved for us. So it seems like it would reduce that barrier.
Definitely. Yeah, both on the level of the quality of the performers that we're pulling in, but then also the quantity of performers and the quantity of our resources, like you're talking about, just when it comes to, if we're thinking about Phantom of the Opera.
I was just going to say, I couldn't think of a really big one
instance,
that's a huge production.
That's a huge production
Yeah.
when it comes to set, when it comes to the number of performers you need and the high level of performers you need for that. It's a huge show. And so if we wanted to do something like that, that would be in the realm of possibility, because we're all sharing both the expense and the profit from our show. And so that's...
And then that's, I mean, as a consumer, that's like, oh wow, that would be one I would love to see locally. But I understand the barriers, and that I think is a pretty interesting concept. And also, as you were talking about the different styles of acting, what an opportunity for everyone within each company to learn.
Yeah.
Really. Because I'm thinking, the other thing I was thinking about is, it's not just the production, but it's the pre-production, directing, rehearsing, building sets, building sound systems, all those things. If you're doing that by yourself, I can't even imagine.
It's a lot.
It's a burnout. I mean, it's like, and that's what basically people are doing now. Because I'm just having watched what they were doing with Here in Town. It was like there were really a small group of people doing a whole lot of work. I mean, the costumes were amazing, the set was amazing, but it was maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people doing each thing, and it was, I would think, coming together and taking those talents and bringing them all together would be really nice.
No, yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah.
So who do you have on board so far?
I don't want to get into
Oh,
that.
okay.
I have.
Oh, okay,
I
sorry.
don't want to create.
No worries.
Yeah, I don't want to say a name now, but then maybe in the summer when we meet, and then they decide, oh, maybe we actually can't do this, but we've had this interview, and so that's made me feel like I have to commit to. I don't want to push anything like that.
Okay.
But there's
I agree.
3 other groups that are interested in participating.
But one of the things, and I don't know where we are in time right now, but
We
one
got
of the things we
about
want to do is
6
talk about
minutes.
things
Other
coming
things,
up this
so
summer.
it'd be a good time
and
to
it'd be a good time to
transition.
talk about that, about other groups that are around and what they're planning on doing in the near future.
Yeah, I that was definitely something that I wanted to do today, was come in and talk about just some of the local theaters, groups that are around here and what they're doing. Because You're in Town just got done. I've got my show at the end of this current month. We've got actually coming up in a week at the what's it called? Hooker Dunham Theater in Brattleboro. The Vermont Theater Company is putting on Ernest, which is like a modern rendition of The Importance of Being Earnest, and that's actually happening next weekend, April 14th, 15th, 21st, 22nd, and the 16th and 23rd. Those 2 weekends, the importance of being earnest is happening. And then we've got, after my show gets done, the Springfield community players are putting on 9 to 5, the Dolly Parton musical.
There you go. That's
That's
another
always
one.
fun.
And I'm actually involved in that as like a small role. My first rehearsal with them, I think, is next week on the 12th. But it's a fun, energetic
Yes.
musical that'll be enjoyable to see, and that's on May 13th, 14th, 20th, and 21st. And then at the Bellows Falls Opera House, like you mentioned, we've got Steel Wheels coming up. That's part of the Ray Masuko concert series, which has been going over phenomenally. And then we've got Chris Smither coming in September 23rd, and the Vermont Symphony Orchestra coming in on November 5th as the final part of the Ray Masuko concert series. Then we've got Smells Like the Nirvana coming up on May 18th, like you mentioned. And then we've also just got our classic film Wednesdays, like tonight, Hugo,
Hey, they're
which
back.
is sponsored by the Village Booksellers.
Nice. Oh, and I apologize because usually I do point out who the sponsor is.
Oh, okay.
And you might want to throw out a plug that you're probably still actively looking for sponsors, right?
Oh,
Always looking.
you're always looking for sponsors. I would always be happy to get some more
just
people.
to remind people that,
Yeah.
that is a good community option, and that it doesn't have to be one single business. It can be a collaborative of a couple businesses, right? So I just want to throw that plug in.
Yeah. And then Ondine, which is a play that John Haddon will be directing this summer at Main Street Arts. There's going to be workshops May 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th, auditions on the 21st and 28th. And then the performances are going to be July 13th, 14th, 20th, 21st, 27th, and 28th.
Nice.
This 3 weekends.
And what is that?
Ondine is an old play about a woman who is a water spirit that falls in love with a knight, and it's got comedy and tragedy in it, and it's incredibly romantic. A lot of the writing, and especially near the end, is incredibly beautiful and just romantic. That would be a word for it when it comes to like kind of the style of writing. It's very romantic and very beautifully written. So I'll actually be involved in that show with John Haddon as well.
So a good date night movie, a good date night.
Oh yeah,
there you
yeah. Tragedy and comedy both combined.
Not that I'm like going to throw it out there, but if anyone was listening that wanted to go on a date with their wife, that might be a thing.
But something that you could do together.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
And so those are some of like the plays that are coming up. Wild Goose Players is also going to be doing The Velveteen Rabbit this summer. It's a musical. And I don't know when the dates are for like the auditions or anything. I tried looking up, but it just says coming soon. So, but you can look there. And all of these groups have their own websites. If you just search for their different names on Google, you can find their websites to be able to buy tickets or look up the audition dates for all of these different things. And then I also want to talk quickly about classes at MSA. We've got a children's chorus that's happening on Mondays. We've got a making art material class on the 13th and 14th of May. We've got Drawing Out Wisdom of the Past, which is a senior-focused writing and art program that's happening on Fridays, which is really cool. We've got Argentine Tango going on with Matthew Peak on Thursdays. We've got yoga with Candace Jensen on Tuesdays, and we've got the string band on Wednesdays that are all happening.
Wow.
So
Nice.
MSA is very busy right now on a
now,
weekly
yeah.
basis when it comes to these programs. And a good number of these are fairly continuous, like the dance classes or the yoga or the string band. Those are all things that I don't really see kind of stopping. They might have like chunks of time where they might pause for a minute, but those are continuous things.
So, as a result of another show, I actually had people on Facebook messaging me and saying they wanted to get their children involved in theater, and so what would you suggest they do? How should a person get immersed in this or dip their toe
Reach
in?
out to me.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
good.
like because
Yeah.
I'm connected to the Springfield players. I know Wild Goose. I deal with the Bellows Falls Opera House and anything that we're doing there, and I'm involved with Main Street Arts as
good.
their facilities
I'll
manager.
message
So
them back
And I
and
think
say
we have
exactly
your
that.
contact info, World Down Under.
yeah,
right?
worldunderwonder@gmail.com. If anybody's interested in trying to get their kids involved
Nope,
in any
guess we
type
don't.
of a in any type of a workshop
Mm-hmm.
or a class or wanting to get into an audition of some kind, like I would be a good stopping point to then say like what's everything that's going on right now, and I can give that list out so then that way people
Yeah.
can make those choices as
That's
to what they
great.
want
That's
to
very
do.
generous of you to offer to that.
Well,
And
that's all part of this whole goal of this collective
Yeah.
is wanting to make sure that we're bouncing off of one another rather than creating these bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. We have about 10 seconds left.
10 seconds. Village Square Booksellers, Deb and Jenna at Remax Upper Valley Partner, Bellows Falls Opera House, Grassroots Funds, Bobolink Communications, and the Through Kern's Eyes is also in honor of Lola and Boo, which were pets of one of our anonymous sponsors, and also of Elizabeth Hunter.
Awesome.
Oh, nice.
And so I just wanted to throw those sponsorships in there.
So that's about all we have time for, but we definitely want to have you back because you're a good connection to a lot of stuff, and I think people have gotten a lot of information, hopefully.
Yeah.
And so we will.
Say goodbye.
Next
We'll see you next week, Bellows Falls. Keene,
Thank you.
And whatever else, Rockingham.
Whoever else, and whoever else is out there.
Who's ever out there. All right. Take it easy. Bye.
Local news, politics, business, sports, arts, music.